Hello. Well, this is my deck profile for my Chaos Breaker deck that I top 8'd at Springfest with my team members Tito and Ryan. It was an interesting event, so pretty much I'll go over the deck. So pretty much starting off, we have the starter, pretty much just generic V starter. If you go second, you get a quick shield. Then starting with the zeros, you have the Brent Gate over trigger, which is pretty much you hit this and your opponent no guards, they pretty much auto die. One draw PG, pretty much just because it's draw PG. It's already a crit that goes back to deck. One, it allows for free lock if there's already a lock card on the field, but also allows you to send this back to the deck. Two stride crits, mostly just because one, it's a crit, but also it allows you to stride with it. But also you have the Starvader stride if you stride into a Starvader, which only doesn't apply for like one stride or one or two strides in the entire deck. Two draws that get 5k if your opponent's grade 3 or greater. Or it's just 10k draw on both ends to maintain hand. Two Starvader heals, because one, it is searchable off of Ravenclaw, and also it allows you to countercharge as well. 4 of the crit that go to Soul to give around your 10k and draw a card. Mostly this is really good because it allows you to feel your soul, because pretty much your soul is pretty much your primary resource that you have to keep up in your deck with chaos, because it allows you to have your interrupt with blowing up markers and such in the format. And that's pretty much all the triggers. And then you have the grade 1s. You have the Crit Elemental PG. Pretty much if your opponent is on a stride, pretty much this is just a free PG. And then if they have any form of guard restrict, like if you're playing against Deep Police, this just does not care about their guard restrict. 2 volt line, pretty much is just on hit. If there is a lock card on the field, you can choose it. It gets, it does not, you choose one of your opponent's lock cards, it does not lock during send step. This is really good, especially on turn 2 if you put it behind a Zirconium, because you could keep a locked card longer in the early game. 2 Thoriums, pretty much there's a Starvader PG, and also if your opponent has 3 or more lock cards, you can draw a card. 2 Meton Axes is a GB version of Meton, or of Volt Line, but also it's also an 11k booster, which makes important numbers later on. And then 3 of the Starvader Stride Assist, just because 80% of your strides are Starvader, and also if you get stuck on close, you can also use this to try to search for Chaos Breaker. And then for Ravenclaw, because it has the on-hit pressure, especially if you go second of riding this, and if your opponent guards it, you're getting cards out of their hand, or 2, and it hits, you get to look at the top 5 at a Starvader. And also you can have chuck itself to Soul to unlock a card and lock another card on your opponent's field, which also feels your soul. Then grade 2s, you have Starvader Globadia, pretty much. On play, you can counterblast 1 if you have a grade 3 or greater Starvader, and your opponent chooses a card from the drop zone, locks it onto the field, and then it gets plus 3k power. Then if your opponent has 2 or more lock cards on the field, it gets another plus 3k power, so it can either be a 12k attacker or a 15k attacker. Dubnium, honestly I've been liking this card. The thing that made me re-put this card into this deck was mostly the re-entered or the with Cosmoing. Pretty much, if you have the ability to have a bunch of counterblast, you can essentially go into these to try to gun more cards out of your opponent's hand, or gain more advantage. But pretty much what this does is has two skills. As one, its first skill is pretty much at the end of the turn, you can soul boss one, retire this card, your opponent chooses a rear guard and locks it, and then has a GB2 skill that when it attacks and you have a Vanguard with Chaos in its card name, you can counterblast one. Your opponent can choose a card from their hand and lock it on the field. If they choose not to, he'll get 10k power and you will draw a card. So it either makes more pressure or forces your opponent to lock more cards onto the field. Then you have your 4 Zirconiums. Pretty much Vanguard Rearguard, when it's placed, you can counterblast one. Opponent locks the top card of the deck to an open rearguard circle. And then if it's to a back row, this gets plus 10k power and you will draw a card. Then also, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, and there's a lock card in the opponent's field, then your Vanguard gets crit becomes 2. Then 2 of the grade 3 heal guards. Pretty much just if you're going second, this allows you to the ability to, if your opponent is trying to pressure you heavily early game, to be able to alleviate that slightly. 4 closes for the ability to rip cards out of your opponent's hand, and it's not too terrible of a ride target. And then 4 Chaos Breaker. It's pretty much the main thing that makes the deck function. Pretty much just he has the ability to destroy markers. He has the ability to lock, which isn't too well because you also have to give your opponent a marker. But the main thing that mostly matters is that when a card is unlocked, you can soul boss one, retire it. Your opponent removes up to 2 markers from their field or hand, and for each marker that's destroyed, you get to make a marker accordingly. Then G-Zone, these are just my markers, which honestly you pretty much only really have to use maybe like 3, maybe 5 markers at max. Because honestly, if you're using more than 3 to 5 markers, then there's probably a problem. So generally for stride-wise, it is either one of these two, which is either Global Avalanche if your opponent has set up some form of field to pretty much lock down your opponent's front row, and if also if you somehow face Messiah, you pretty much just go into this, flip the other copy of it, and it basically turns Messiah's strides into vanillas. Because if there are 2 of these face up in your G-Zone, instead of cards unlocking, they get bound face down instead, which is pretty much the only applicable use of having 2 of this in the G-Zone. And then you have Chaos Universe, which pretty much you pretty much have like 1 skill, what is actually more of like 2 skills. So you can counterblast one, flip a copy of himself. You choose open rearguard circle, your opponent locks a card from their hand onto it, and then if you have 2 or more face-up cards in your G-Zone, you can choose a card on the field to lock, which generally isn't used too often. And we have Cosmoing. Pretty much the only time, most of the time this just gets flipped, but if you are in a pinch and you need to establish some form of field, or look at the top 7 and try to get cards to your hand like PGs, maybe heal triggers to use for heal guards or for G guards, that's probably the only applicable use for it at the current moment. Then 2 days or 1 Stark. Honestly, this is only really usable in the Chaos Mirror match, just because honestly in the Chaos Mirror match it honestly turns into a game of who Starks first and is able to kill the opponent. Then 2 deluges, pretty much. What it does is a GB3. You can soul boss 1, flip a card in your G zone, discard a card, and then your opponent chooses 2 cards from their hand, lock it onto the field. And then if your opponent has 4 or more damage, or 4 or less damage, you can choose a locked card on the field, ping it till their damage level face down, and that's pretty much it. Pretty much is more of like a really late game stride to try to pressure your opponent into a super advantageous position. And then pretty much the main stride that you work towards is just glue ball. Is pretty much mid to late game is pretty much him, because he pretty much makes your power calls, but he also allows you to keep up the control pace of your game. Which pretty much what he does is soul boss 1, flip a card in G zone, your opponent locks the amount of cards equal to the amount of face cards in your G zone, and then GB3 for each face-up card for each locked card on the field. Your front row starfighters get plus 30k power, so it increases the power threshold of your field. It also allows you to maintain lock. And then the G guards, we have 1 Cosmo Wreath to deal with back row, but also have the ability to snipe cards if there are problematic cards in the back row. 1 Lacus Carina, same thing of just taking care of back row. The only thing is this is GB1 restricted, and you have to lock cards on your field. And then 2 Destiny Guardian, which pretty much just allow you to G guard, unlock cards on your opponent's field, and if you have chaos in your field, you can potentially pop those and gain advantage. Those are pretty much it. I can pretty much try to go over how things went for the event wise. There were, I believe, about 19 teams for this Springfest teams. It was interesting. There's like 5 rounds of Swiss. Round 1, I faced Thavis. The matchup was interesting. Honestly, I pretty much just kept their damage low, and then pretty much from there, they ended up decking themselves, mostly due to the grade 2, the new grade 2 promos that allow you to, at the beginning of your ride phase, if you are grade 1, to discard it and then look at top, I think it's top 5 or top 7 for grade 2, and they used like 2 or 3 of those on that grade 2 turn, so that thinned out their deck a lot, which we ended up winning. Round 2, I faced Bermuda, which is honestly probably the hardest matchup for Chaos, just because Heltrude has the ability to bounce pretty much locked cards to their hand. The major issue that matchup had is that due to my opponent using Heltrude and then Reindeer consistently, they were grinding their hand down immensely, but also not making as much pressure as they needed to. So they eventually just lost due to just being outpaced, which we ended up winning. Round 3, I faced Nightmare Dolls, which for me playing Silverthorns, I was like, oh, the Harry Shrine exists, and I remembered, the Harry Shrine is choice restricted with Alice. So pretty much you lock down their field, that deck can't do anything, and that's pretty much what happened. And we ended up winning that round. Round 4, we faced, I believe we faced Nubatama. I'm a bit confused of round 4, round 5, because I get them a bit mixed up. But round 4 or round 5, we faced Nubatama. It was pretty much back and forth. Pretty much the only like stride that they went into was Cherne Mukuro, which is pretty much just dominates the Vanguard and then pretty much wipes out my field, which I'm fine with. I just couldn't guard their second Mukuro swing. which ended that game. And then the 5th round I faced Gear Chronicle, which pretty much they had a G assist for grade 3. They missed it, and I wasn't able to pressure them enough, so by the time they were able to get to grade 3, they pretty much just spiraled out of control and just ended the game. And then pretty much after that, they announced top cut. We were 5th out of top 8. So then we went to deck check. Deck check went pretty well. There was a team that got DQ'd out of top 8. So they got DQ'd, and then I believe 9th place got bumped up to 8th, and such. And then we played our top 8 match, which we faced the New Batama team from either round 4 or 5. I ended up winning against them, and we ended up winning. So then we moved to our top 4 match, which we faced the Gear Chronicle team from round 4/5, which we ended up losing, all 3 of us. So then we went to our top 3/4 game placement, which I faced Highlander. They went first, and pretty much with that, they were able to outpace me entirely, in my entire opinion, and pretty much being outpaced as a control deck and having to claw entirely back, there's nothing that you can really do. But other than that, the event went pretty well. I could see a bunch of people I haven't seen in forever. It was great. But thank y'all for watching, and y'all have